Hi, good afternoon. Just like another exciting webinar day for us here from sunny South Africa. So we're still in winter, still cold. I just had a meeting with one of our clients, kickoff meeting in Middle East. So they're running 49 to 51 degrees Celsius. So we don't have that amount of heat here, but nice sunny weather here. So another Wednesday afternoon webinar, quite excited to be, and especially for me today as well, because myself, as you know, I started my career as a system integrator and also working for some of the largest vendors. So Siemens for 5 years, Schneider for 10 years, Cytec for also about 7 years. And so, you know, with working with this with the company Age Technology today and listening to them, they are representing all these companies. So quite an exciting time to be with them today on this. You know, so yeah, like I said before, we are in a new operating conditions, so what we call extreme VUCA. So yeah, there's a lot of volatility, lots of uncertainty and change in the market. So a lot of focus on, you know, for clients to work more remotely, and specifically in some areas of the world with the COVID numbers increasing again, the emphasis on it is even coming more so. So, you know, less eyes and ears on site. So the ability to access the data and the information from site securely and remotely is accelerating quite a lot. There's quite a lot of requirements for agility as well. The clients are scaling up in production quite a lot the whole time. So we need to be able to flexibly control the control environments on how you do that. And give them information. A lot of focus, as always, on energy efficiency and sustainability. So the whole concept of the level of integration needs to be improved. The 3 levels of integration: the integration of energy to automation, quite important. Integrating the edge to the cloud, also very important in these times. And also, you know, running from where you had this separate sites. All running separately, the whole concept of now enterprise cloud integration of all these sites is becoming quite critical. Focus on collaboration everywhere. It is said that the best place to collaborate is in the digital space, and that's what we provide through what we're doing the whole time. So very, very important as well. Remote monitoring services also becoming quite important. So, you know, supported by software that we provide or apps or analytics, you know, all services. So, you know, clients wants to look at their mills and their crushers, their pumps and their drag lines and their, you know, mining equipment remotely, and also they want to look at their process plants remotely and being able to analyze what had happened. So yeah, we kicked off this sort of now nearly 10 weeks of educational webinar series on various themes, and really the key focus is to upskill our clients on some of these amazing technologies and solutions that we provide, you know, and sort of learn about all these agile, intelligent technologies that we as a company, that 4Sight operational technology cluster provides to the clients. So all focus on running the client's assets greener and faster, longer and safer. So through the course of this event, if you look at what I'm showing here right now, we showed quite a lot of different technologies already. So basically we focused on, for example, advanced process control, you know, and you know, how can that, you know, reduce the energy of a plant, you know, by 10%, or reduction of 20% of the chemical usage in a process plant, or increasing the yield 3 to 4% is what we do with advanced process control. We had 2 sessions on that already. Asset performance management, also 2 sessions on that, like how do we predict a failure on average 3 weeks before the time, but sometimes also, you know, 6 weeks before the time. You know, last week we had one on multivariate analysis, and we were focusing on, you know, on how do you basically predict quality of the process or a lab value 2 days before the time, and you can do it with this multivariate analysis technology that we have. There were sessions at MES. How do you run the operations leaner and, you know, and also more remote with the people? You know, delay accounting and basically improving, you know, the downtime. So making sure that you avoid downtime and capture causes of downtime, and improving the OEE of the assets and of the operations is becoming very, very topical and very, very focused on right now. And then really what we're going to, you know, focus on today is like focus more on you know, 1st of July, asset automation, in a bit of optimization as well. But like, you know, if I talk again to that greener, safer, so safer, like, you know, we can basically make it's about 20% safer for the workforce, with automation. From a greener point of view, like, reduce the energy consumption by automation by 15 to 20%, also make the sustainability and the carbon footprint reduction, because automation, what we do, it reduces, the amount of energy that you use, and that's directly linked to carbon. Running longer, like, saving, making the equipment more available, so 25% more available on average. Also predicting, like I said before, a failure, a week up to 3 weeks on average before it happens, and running faster. So the team will talk about how they engineer much faster, like 30% faster than what they used to do in the past. Also reducing the maintenance cost substantially, improving the yield, improving OEE of a facility 5 to, sometimes 15%. So these are all the type of things that we do with this amazing technology that we have. So maybe just a quick overview of what we do in the asset optimization operational technology in the 4Sight operational technology cluster, and some of the solutions that we basically provide there. So really, firstly, we believe that if you take data and intelligent technologies together, you get to an intelligent enterprise. So at 4Sight, we talk about this as the Enterprise 5.0, this new era where basically business environment and also operational technology and IT technologies comes together and provide huge value for the client. So the type of things that we are providing is, firstly, we integrate. So we basically, if you take data and you bring it with technology and you serve people with their requirements, and you think also about the new business models that will bring value to them, and you use the power of the cloud, you can really bring quite a lot of value to the clients today. So if you look at the technologies that we, through the 3 companies that we have as part of the 4Sight OT cluster in there, with the type of technology that we bring in. So we'll learn about some of them today, but like technologies like OT, so industrial Internet of Things, IIoT, or various AI, deep learning, machine learning technologies that is now being added to software that we already basically provide that brings value. Things like advanced data analytics or multivariate analysis in our software solutions, simulation type technologies that I'm going to speak about right now, also in virtual reality and AR. These are all very, very important parts of contribution that we do in that operational environment to bring more value for the data before we interface it to the business environment, ERP, SAP type systems. So if we look, just before I hand over to the 3 companies, so maybe let's start from the top. So normally we start with like the concept of the digital twin, and so we have a group, simulation engineering technology set with about 25 industrial engineers out of Johannesburg that does simulation and scheduling for mining operations, but also some commercial operations throughout the world and a lot in South Africa. So they focus on constraint simulation of mining and industrial processes. They focus on optimizing, planning and scheduling and the simulation of that, and also the control of that. And so really they tell us where the areas are that we need to basically focus on more. And then really what we then come is another team that comes in is the asset optimization group, BluESP, which I work in, and really we're an AspenTech reseller and ISP. So we in the focus of basically transferring the data that we get from the shop floor, and turn it into information, knowledge, wisdom, and bringing value to the data through, lots of these things that I show you, like machine learning, doing predictions, or advanced process control, improving the yield, and a lot of the things that we talk about throughout this whole thing. So we see ourselves as a very dynamic, agile company with multidisciplinary engineers. So in BluESP, there's chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical, data scientists, all working together to bring asset optimization to the client. And then we also we see or follow AspenTech as our road models, and we use the very advanced technology, this embedded AI and machine learning and deep learning that they bring into their tested and trialed advanced process control or asset performance management or MES type software to market through them. And then the last group that's in the 4Sight operational technologies cluster is ACE technologies. And really what they are, they basically deploy, instrumentation, measurement, and they connect to this, they link it to PLCs, DCSs, and they bring, control and safety, and, and the team there will talk a lot about that. I think the last comment before I hand over to Marie to introduce the audience to you today, the presenters to you today, is just to say that they're a multi-vendor system integrator that provides solutions for the likes of Rockwell and Siemens and Schneider Electric and instrumentation houses, all around, and they do some great work. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Marie to tell us a little bit about herself and also to introduce the speakers of today. Marie, over to you.
Thank you, Willem. A very welcome from myself, Marie Oberholzer, Marketing Manager at AspenTech.
Marie, we just need sound from you.
Can you hear me? Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Testing.
Okay, it's working.
Thank you, Willem. Can you hear me now?
Yes, 100%. Thanks, Marie.
A very warm welcome from myself, Marie Oberholzer, Marketing Manager at AspenTech Technologies. I've been part of the AspenTech family for the last 10 years, and it's been an absolutely amazing journey. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Joining me today, Managing Director of AspenTech Technologies, Dani Barnard, and Operations Director, Mr. Michael Powell. For the past 3 years, Dani has been the Managing Director of AspenTech Technologies. He holds his bachelor degree in engineering, majoring in electronic and electrical engineering from Northwest University. He started his 25-year-long career as automation engineer in the M segment and was involved in many large automation projects. Mr. Michael Powell, our Operations Director. Michael holds a National Diploma in Electrical Engineering from the Vaal University of Technology, as well as a Management Diploma from Northwest University. Michael is well known in the industry as automation. He's well known in the automation field, and Michael has over 20 years of experience. Over to you, Dani.
Thank you, Marie. I wish I still was 25 years. Yes, thank you, Marie, and thank you, Willem, for setting this up today. I'm privileged to be part of this webinar series. I think the topics being covered over the last few weeks were excellent, and we are looking forward to share our part of the knowledge stack as well with the rest of the audience. I would like to thank everybody in the audience as well for joining us today, making their time available to join us, because I know that I've seen with COVID-19, there were a lot of webinars happening all the time, so it's difficult to make time for all of them. So I think it helps a lot if it says a lot if you make time available to watch us. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with just to quickly, Willem explained it earlier about the different companies in our OT segment cluster in 4Sight Holdings. So I think the best way to explain it is to look at your ISA 95 technology stack. If you look at what we have here, we got that it shows where each of the companies in 4Sight fits in. Now, AspenTech Technologies, how I usually explain it to people, if you look at what Willem explained earlier today, in our group of companies as well, we do MES, advanced process control, maintenance management systems, we have simulation technologies, there's artificial intelligence, and lots of software today that needs information from the physical world. And what AspenTech Technology does is we connect the physical world to the digital world. And we do that by deploying the control systems with the necessary instrumentation, and then basically making that information available to systems on a higher level. As a systems integration company, we do partner with, we have certification with all the major vendors in this space. I'm the big 3-4 that we typically work with is Schneider Electric, Rockwell Automation, Siemens, ABB. We have Wonderware certification as well in our team. So basically, for us, it's more about providing a solution on top of the technologies, and we partner with the different vendors depending on what the end user uses on their sites. Maybe the next slide will give you a little bit more information. It's just a bit of a deep dive into the different technologies. So like Alan said, if you want to measure, if you want to understand what's going on in your plant, you need to measure it. So we have the instrumentation that we provide, and that links to your plant controllers, either directly with physical I/O, or we look at networks, field networks. That's where the connect comes in. And from there you go into the physical or the visualization area where you visualize it on your SCADA systems. And from there you can then move on to your, the PLC. From the PLC basically does the plant control, and then you visualize on top of that. And from there we go to the data systems where we use historians to basically capture all the information, and then also make it available for the systems higher up if you look at your management execution systems, etc. Just the last, before I hand over to Michael, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about us as a company, how we manage our company. So we have in H Technologies, we basically work on 5 business revenue streams. We call it instrumentation, where we for a physical layer of the plant. We have control systems, which is the bulk, the larger component of our plant, and then also we look at the electrical energy management, and then also the connecting layer between all the instrumentation, the ICT. So this is supported by common functions in our business. Most important is the project management office, supported by the engineering team, the after sales and services team, and then we have finance and sales supporting the business on that. Okay, so I think that's just a quick overview of H Technologies. I'm going to, a little bit later in the presentation, I will continue with some other topics. For now, I'm going to hand over to Michael.
Thank you, Donnie. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining this session. As Marie said, my name is Michael Powell. I'm the Operations Director. I just want to start off my presentation by going a bit more into the history of manufacturing. And I want to go back to the mid-1700s, where we had the first industrial revolution, and that was with the introduction of steam. And that was a revolution. And from that revolution, there was evolution. Now, what happened is, if you specifically look at the textile industry, what happened was that manufacturing was then centralized by these big machines that was driven by steam. So where they did the textile manufacturing in their own homes, it was now centralized manufacturing on a larger scale. And then about a century later, came the introduction of electricity, and with the introduction of electricity, one of the pioneers was Mr. Henry Ford. And what he did is he utilized this electricity, this revolution, and he powered conveyor lines, and he started the manufacturing process. But what he did as well is he broke down that manufacturing process into smaller steps, and that was called the division of labor. So each guy within that process had a step that he had to do to manufacture the final product, and that was the division of labor. Now, another 100 years later, we moved on, and we got the introduction of computers. And more specifically, if we look at the industrial sector, it was the introduction of electronics into the plant and the process. And what then happened was, where Mr. Henry Ford broke down this process into different steps with the division of labor, those steps we could actually automate with the electronic equipment that we've got in the plant. And that increased the production, and it increased the repeatability as well. So we could get better quality product at a repeatable stage. Then we move another 100 years later, and we get the 4th industrial revolution. Now, that's where we are now. Now, the first presentation I listened to on the 4th industrial revolution, I thought, we've been doing this for years, and the guys that work in the industrial sector would think, We have done it for years. So what we've done is we've collected data, we brought it into the PLC, we could visualize it on the SCADA, we pumped it into a historian, we could actually historize that data over there, we could trend that data, we could use that data to make intelligent decisions on our plant. So what were we actually doing when we were going to the fourth industrial revolution? Now the fourth industrial revolution is actually the convergence of IT and OT. And that's where I see the big difference. And if you have a look at this convergence of IT and OT, I believe it's Ethernet that did it. So in the beginning, IT and OT and Ethernet was the matchmaker of a boxing match. And why I say this is because in the previous industrial revolution, we had PCs that was communicating on proprietary network, either 232 on a point-to-point communication, or we had a 485 type daisy chain connection or bus connection, and we could communicate to the different devices. But what then happened with the introduction of Ethernet and with the standards on Ethernet, Ethernet was actually moved into the industrial sector, and we had PLCs that were going onto Ethernet. What then happened was the IT guy walked into the plant, and he could actually see that in the control room, we didn't have any switches then, there was a hub, and he said, where did you guys buy this hub? And then the guy would say, listen, this is part of the OT side, just stay out of my space. And then he would see the Dell PC, and he would see the Dell server, and he'd say, where did you guys buy this? You're not allowed to buy PCs. It's an IT product. And he said, listen, but our standard is actually HP. And there was a big fight, I almost swore there. There was a big fight there between this IT and OT guy. If you look at my picture of the OT guy, you can see he's a bit more buff. So we always won this fight, but we kept our network isolated from the IT network. What then happened was the production guy went onto the OT floor, and he could see this visualization. He could see this data being collected. He could see the value of the trending. And he said to the IT guy, listen here, but actually I want this data and I want this visualization. I want it on my desk. I need it on my desk. And that's when we started moving the data across into the IT space. And then eventually we moved to the space where we had the technology where we could actually make the data available remotely. Now, if we look at our lives, so there's this Internet of Things. So what has changed in our lives? If you look on the top of the slide there, you'll see that that's all the old technologies. You've got the phone. Imagine you had to phone someone now and say, listen here, and you hope that he's available on the other side. Imagine you get to Germany and you have to have your hotel name printed out because you can't speak German. And that's the way we used to communicate. If you look at the third one there with the Teams meetings, our lives have changed. Look at this. We're doing a webinar with 150 people, and we can actually speak to you guys, and you don't have to take lots of time traveling to a specific webinar and actually listening to it, and you're much more efficient. The same with your Google Maps, with your Waze, you can plan your day much better. So if technology has made this big change in our lives, and it's made us much more efficient and effective in our lives, why are you not making it your first priority in your company to actually implement these technologies and getting your plant to run as effectively and efficiently as possible? It's inevitable, it's coming, it's here. So now, there was a company in the UK, they actually did a study over 200 large industrial companies, and they asked the question, so why are companies slow on taking on this Industry 4 technology? And they came up with lots of reasons, and I think the majority of them are valid reasons. And I want to highlight 3 of those reasons today. The one on the far left there is probably the most important one, and that's the one that we struggle with the most, is actually getting people to understand the value of data. Understanding what that data can give him, because he understands, he says, listen, I've been running my plant and my process in this specific way for the past 20 years, and it's been working. Why do I need to change now? I have to upskill my people if I bring in this technology. I just think that it's companies that's bringing technologies, they want to sell more product, but my plant is working. So we need to try and convince that person that he understands the value of the data and the value that data can add to his process in running his process more efficiently and effectively. If we have a look at the middle section of the slide there, you would see, and that's a real valid one, is the cyber security. So now moving your data off-site into Azure, You know, how comfortable is the companies in doing that, you know, because it might be hacked, there might be viruses. And I always use the analogy of, if I had to give you R1 million in a suitcase today, would you go and would you put that suitcase under your bed and save it over there? No. You would go and you would put it in a bank. And the reason you put it in a bank is because they specialize in keeping that specific asset safe. And not only that, once you've put it in there, you've got access to that specific asset from anywhere in the world. Now they specialize in that. Exactly the same with companies like Azure. They specialize in keeping data safe and giving you access to that data from anywhere in the world. Their business is built on that. If they had to have a breach in their security, it would be detrimental to their business. Where on plants, the guy that normally looks after this part of the business is normally an operator using a tool, and he actually manages this tool. Where these companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars in keeping your assets safe. If we go to the far right, that's the biggest question is, what's my return on investment? You know, companies say, you know, I really think that this Industry 4 technology is a problem looking for a solution. They don't understand the clear value of it, very similar to the guy on the right there, and it's a mindset change. And we have to put a roadmap in place to understand that he's going to get a return on investment and self-fund the projects as he moves forward. If we go to the factory, how the factory has changed, I'm quickly going to run on this. If we go on the far left-hand side, specifically in the sensor business has changed, where sensors used to connect to intelligent devices. Now we've got a sensor that's intelligent. The sensor can actually do processing, and the sensor can actually send data directly up into the cloud. If we look to the middle there, what we've got there is we've got machines communicating to machines. Now in Industry 3.0, we've always had that, you know. We've even had plants communicating to plants. But what has changed now is now we've got on an enterprise level, we've got an enterprise view. Enterprises communicating to enterprises. You can actually communicate to your supply chain. You can see the stock in their stores. You can have just-in-time delivery. You can have communication directly to your customers. You know, customers, they are becoming more and more difficult. They want the products more and more fit for purpose for their solution. So there needs to be a seamless communication between the customer and the plant. If we look on the far right, that's the result of it. The result of it is that we've got all these sensors on the left, we've got all these plants, we've got all these devices that we personally use, and everything is pumping up data into this cloud. And this is where the term big data comes from. And if you don't understand the term big data, if you take data and you open it up in Excel and you can make sense of that data, then it's not big data. It gets to the point where the data is so big that us as humans, we can't make sense. And this is where Wilhelm and his team, they've got artificial intelligence that can actually go into that data. And as he said, we can do multivariate analysis and we can really pull the value out of that data. I read one article where they said 2% of the data in the world is being used. The other one said 5%, but still it's very, very little. We've got all this data and there's a lot of value sitting in the data. And unfortunately, us as humans, we haven't got the capacity to actually make sense of the data and get value out of the data. That's why you need the AI agents to get that golden batch, to be manufactured over and over again. You know, I struggle with my wife with the Babuti, you know, she doesn't get it right over and over again. You know, I wish I could put in advanced process control in that as well. But yeah, and then if we go to the bottom there, we've got the virtual reality, we've got the augmented reality, you know, that's more on the services side and the training side. That's becoming more and more available and being used. And then on the additive manufacturing as well, you know, so with Wilhelm and them with their prescriptive and predictive maintenance, they can see in 2 weeks' time, we're going to lose this bearing. They can send that design through to the additive manufacturing, and that part can actually be manufactured in advance. If we have a look at the machine vendor space, now that is also changing, you know, and I put the icon of Uber there as well. So what has happened, and it's already happened, where you've got the diesel generator companies actually renting out units to you. You know, it will be exactly the same with compressors, eventually with crushers and thickeners. So that's changing, where that guy is actually going to own that asset. So you're not going to be responsible to actually take out that big capital expenditure and buy that asset. That guy is going to own the asset, he's going to put it down there as an operational expense, and you are going to pay for the amount of production that that unit does. Why they do it is because with fourth industrial revolution technology, they've got access to that specific unit, and they can actually monitor that unit and make sure that that unit's got 99% uptime. What are you saving on the right there? If I look on the right there, you're saving that big capital expenditure, you're saving the maintenance, you're saving the insurance on it, and you're getting more production because he wants the unit to produce because it's his and you are paying him for the production. So better production and better uptime of the unit as well. Now, how has the control environment changed? So Donnie showed this slide on the left here. So this is the traditional hierarchy of the control environment. So we've got an instrument in the plant, be it flow, pressure, temperature, feeding directly into a control system. From the control system, we feed into the SCADA, maybe into a historian on the side, a small historian, pumping directly into the MES historian, and then back through to the ERP. Now, what has happened with Industry 4 technology? Exactly the same. This stack has been pulled apart. And now, where I said with the instrument companies, with the sensors, now you've got an instrument that can directly send data up to the MES layer. So where you will always have those sensors that tie into your control system that's necessary for your plant to run and for your plant to run safely. But if there is, let's say, a temperature on a bearing, we can put a sensor on that bearing and that data can be pulled directly into the database. The MES can, with its AI agent, predict that there's going to be a failure, communicate a work order through to the ERP, or stop the machine if it's a safety issue. So that's what can happen with all this Industry 4 technology that we've got. If we look at the supplier landscape. Now, the supplier landscape has changed. And where I saw it is the biggest fair in the world is the Hanover Fair. And if you go back about 8 years' time, you walked into the Hanover Fair, and you walked in there and you saw this big hall and it said, Schneider, wow. Walked into the next hall, Siemens, wow. Next hall, ABB, Rockwell. You just see all these big brands. Now these days, you walk into the automation fair, this Hanover Fair. Still you see Rockwell, wow, Siemens, Schneider, ABB, all of them. But then you walk and you see a big hall and it says, Microsoft, wow, Huawei, wow. So what has happened is that actually proves that this IT and OT is actually starting to work together, even on that scale. And if you look on the right there, companies, and this is again with that IH market where they did the study, they asked those 200 companies, they said, listen, who would you like to implement your Industry 4 roadmap, your smart factory roadmap? Would it be the IT guy or do you want it to be the OT guy? And they couldn't get to a clear answer. Now, if you look on the right there, the companies that are going to be successful is companies that's got this ecosystem of partners. And this is where I'm going to do a bit of a sales talk on 4Sight. 4Sight is one of those companies that we are an ecosystem of companies that can not only give you a roadmap for your Industry 4 conversion, but we can actually, within our companies, we can actually execute and implement that projects as well. So I don't know if there's any other companies in the world that can actually give, has got that capabilities of doing that. Now I'm going to move a bit more into Wilhelm space, into the BluESP space. So if you look at, there's a little column there on the right that says availability, performance, and quality. You know, so you've got your planned production time, then you've got your actual operating time, then you've got your performance, which is your targeted output, but there's actually only actual output, and then you've got your good quality compared to your actual output. And that all multiplies with each other, and that's a snowball effect. Now, if you have a look at the overall equipment efficiency worldwide, it's currently sitting at just over 60%. What that means is with your current asset that you've got 40% more capability sitting there. So just focusing on using all this available data and actually optimizing this processes makes 100% sense. That is where the investment should be. I highlighted two of them there, and I'm using the analogy of a vehicle. One of them is equipment failure, and one of them is operator inefficiency. Now, in equipment failure, it's normally when a when a machine fails. So it's very similar with your vehicle that breaks down next to the road. Operator inefficiency is when the operator drives it nicely on a Sunday drive. So he sits there and he's got his production line set up and he runs it easy. So he doesn't have to jump up every now and then. Or he runs it in the wrong gear. So you're busy driving with your car down to Cape Town in the third gear, which is not efficient for the vehicle. So if we have a look at that, on the left-hand side there with maintenance, and this is where Dani is going to talk a bit more about standards. If you can just imagine if someone breaks down next to the road with his, I'm going to use the example, a C-Class Mercedes. He breaks down next to the road and the mechanic goes out there, and on that C-Class Mercedes, the CPU, that specific model came out with 8 different types of CPUs, and he doesn't know which one it is. So already he needs to carry 8 different programming terminals to go and actually see what the problem is. And each one of them have got a different language, and he only knows the one really well, the other one he doesn't know that well. So if it's that one, it's going to be a longer breakdown. When he gets there, eventually figuring out which one he needs to use, he gets to the fault, he says, oh, it's actually the fuel filter. Now he knows, okay, the fuel filter is supposed to sit close to the petrol tank at the back there. He gets there, it doesn't sit there. There was no standard manufacturing. That petrol filter is sitting somewhere else in the line, maybe closer to the engine. And all of that increases the downtime of this machine. And that's why it's important to keep standard spares, standards in your software. And Dani is going to talk a bit more about that. If we go to the right-hand side there, that's the operator inefficiency. And there I like to talk about, if you look at Top Gear, when they climb in a vehicle, they climb in and they say, so that is the operator of the plant. He sits there and he climbs and he says, everything is nice and accessible. I've got all my screens up here. I can access the mill. I can access the crusher. I can quickly stop and start. I've got all my alarms. Exactly like that. You've got your air conditioner that's really close. You can easily reach that. You can reach the radio. You've got remote connection on your steering wheel. But how many of us have climbed into a vehicle? So you drive a European style vehicle with the indicator on the one side and the wipers on the other side. And then when you land on the other side, you rent a Japanese or Korean vehicle and they've swapped it around. So how many times have you driven on the road and when you wanted to change lanes, you put it on the wipers? What did that cause? The cause of that is because there's not a standard and it actually caused a safety risk. So it's extremely important that we use standards, specifically with starting motors, starting pumps, the visualization on SCADAs. I think this is now my last slide. The control and data, should it be on-premise and off-premise? And this is now talking from a guy that does control systems, So I always work on-premise, So for me to understand, I'm that guy that, listen here, this is how we do it. We put a PLC down, we control the motors. Now that car that I've got there, that's the Rolls-Royce Vision. That's their first autonomous vehicle. If you look at the Rolls-Royce, people have always thought that the Rolls-Royce was actually an autonomous vehicle because it was never driven by the owner. You had the chauffeur driving it. So very similar to how we, from the second industrial revolution to the third one, where we automated Henry Ford's steps, we're busy automating that chauffeur. So what makes sense is the guy climbs into the vehicle, he gets identified by the vehicle, it says, hello, Mr. Powell, and then what makes sense is it links up to my calendar that's sitting off-premise. And it says that I have actually got a meeting in Sandton. Then it links up to the data sitting in the Waze database or the Google Maps database. And it says that there's quite a bit of traffic and we have to leave it a certain amount of time. That also makes sense. But the moment that vehicle starts driving, then we're in the control system space. Do you want that vehicle, when it goes across a green traffic light and someone else comes across the red traffic light, do you want that vehicle to make that decision by first linking up through remote connectivity up to the cloud with the processor running over there and communicating back and telling the vehicle to stop? Or do you want that control to be on that vehicle? So, to me, currently, I don't see that there's, and I'm not going to say never, but I don't see it that all control will ever be off-premise. You've got your critical control that will always be on-premise, and for you to decide on exactly where your control should it sit on-premise or off-premise, The exercise you have to do is you need to understand what is your critical control. And that control you need to keep on premise. And the control that's not that critical, that doesn't run at less than a millisecond, because we've got tasks with cut to length runs that run at microseconds. You'll never be able to move that type of control off premise and have that as an IIoT sensor that comes through on the encoder. So that does not make sense. Now, how does all this affect my plant's operations and future projects? So I'm going to hand over back to Dani now. Dani is going to focus a bit more on the detail of exactly how we do it and when we do what, and specifically on the standards with relation to plants. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to get the controls ready here. Okay, that was an excellent explanation, I think, from Michael's side and on how we, what is on-premise, what is off-premise, what is Industry 4, and how does it affect our everyday lives. So I thought, to bring it a little bit back into, we need to think, okay, so how does this all affect me in my operations, and how will it affect my future projects coming up? So let's go to the next slide. So typically, if you look at the first step is we want to find out, okay, what is our investors want? If you look at the commodity cycles currently in the world and the globalization, so the commodity cycles are shorter. So so we need to implement our plants faster. The market is very competitive and it's global. So it needs to be efficient and it needs to be built with reliable suppliers. Suppliers is going to be there for the duration of the plant. So we're seeing operations also expanding into territories where maybe the governments are not so mature and policies change regularly. There might be some political instability. So typically investors might be hesitant to invest large amount of money for a lot, with the risk of capital not being recovered soon enough. So what we also have seen in the last few years is where we would start an operation, but try to get it up and running as soon as possible, and then expand the project as they start with production. So that's where I call it self-funding expansions. We also need to consider what is the local support at that specific in that specific operation. So you can find you might have a skills gap or skills shortage in that area. So you need to design your plant with that taking that into consideration. So we've looked at the latest technology trends. Just move to the next slide here. So we can ask ourselves, how will it affect our projects? So our projects are now on much tighter schedules. As I've seen implementation time on typical automation projects being cut up to 40% in recent times. I'm sure many of you have seen the same trend over the last 2 decades. How we started, the pressure is now starting to get more and more on project teams, which means that you need to have a team with a very high skill level to design your plant, and it needs to be fit for purpose, and they need to make sure that it's ready for future expansions. So to achieve this, you need to use proven project methodologies with streamlined processes in place for procurement, documentation, quality control, etc. So there's no time now anymore to do everything from scratch on each project, and that is where we get to our. So if you look at that the effect of what's on the project, it also you need to then see, okay, what will the effect be on our automation supplier? So let's get a little bit closer to home and see, us as automation supplier, H Technologies, how does it affect us? So we have seen in the last few years that we are now being brought into the project much earlier, even during the feasibility phase of a project. And we are also a lot of the time asked to provide estimates on even preliminary design data. so that the procurement cycle can be shortened. And by the time when the design is finalized, that some of the automation work is also started. So it happens more in parallel. So instead of designing plants, I can see instead of the customer designing specific plant code structures and standards, I've seen also that a lot of the time, to save on time, they would say, okay, you as the systems integrator need to bring your own standards to the table, and then they will review our standards and we will work from there, take it from there. The system needs to be cost effective, and with not unnecessary complexity, to allow for local support on the first level, as I explained in the previous slide. With the capability, if you look at the new normal that we are facing with the current COVID-19 crisis, we need to have the ability to remotely support these sites for advanced control. So we've seen that the key to success in these dynamic project environments is to have look at automation standards. So if you look at project standards, you need to ask yourself, when you develop a piece of code or any piece of work that you are doing, you need to ask yourself, the 80-20 rule, that's what we call it, apply a lot of the time. So you have to ask yourself, so how much of the work that you are doing today is really unique on your specific plant or process? So how many, and if it is unique, is it something that you're going to reuse again later? Is it something that you can reuse? So if you think about it in that way, then you will realize that let's rather develop a standard block that I can reuse the next time. And if there are some modifications or enhancements required the next one, I take the standard block, I modify it, enhance it, and I can actually roll it back to my previous installations as well. So that makes it then feasible for you to have a good quality source code, and then but also have the ability to to make your rollout much easier. And we've seen. So I'm going to move here on the next slide. So using this approach, if you use standard blocks, standards that has been developed before and has been tried and tested, you will then see that you will reduce a lot of the risk in your project and into your implementation. So if you look at the, I just want to take it a little bit further onto the project environment. If you look at the well-known triple constraint in project management, the temptation is always there to reduce the cost on the projects by cutting on the deliverables or maybe on the quality. But by using standards, you can help reduce your costs, but you can actually speed up your delivery, and then also while maintaining the necessary quality. So I think that is the big advantage of you. Look at the benefits of using standards. It helps you to reduce the learning curve for engineers and technicians on new projects, but because they have worked on it before. So we have a lot of the time a scenario on the automation projects environment where you as a customer are very much reliant on one engineer in your system integrator because he's the guy that knows your plant. And if something happens to that engineer, you are actually in the same amount of trouble as the systems integrator. So it's very important that when system integrators have their 20 to 30 engineers on staff, that all of those guys understand the same set of control system standards, so that you can easily cycle engineers through plants. And that's something that we've been focused on in H Technologies, to allow us to give that flexibility to our customers. One important thing I just want to highlight here as well, standards also greatly simplifies the integration of MES and APC and the other higher level functions that Willem explained earlier, with your control system. So if you, then there's a lot, and then that, and I will in the next slide maybe go a little bit onto that, because if you decide to roll out a predictive maintenance system on a plant and you need to collect control system data, you would like to collect it with, on plant areas with similar standards, for example, tag naming conventions, etc. Okay. So then I just want to find out maybe mention something as well. When you look at standards, your The difference between having standards and just delve into coding a lot of the time, specifically our engineers, we just like to jump in and start coding. It doesn't work like that when you want to follow a structured standard approach, because standards, when you do use standards, it forces you to spend a lot more time upfront in the design phase of your project. So you have to start, you spend more time in designing, making sure that you address all the necessary scenarios, but then you save time in your development phase, because then it's more of a repetitive scenario. Okay, so maybe just as the last slide from my side, I want to, I've spoken a lot about standards and in the software environment, but it does not only apply to software coding. If you think about it, it applies to all functions in an automation project. So we apply this methodology. It starts in our project management office, where we follow the standards for projects documentation. When you've developed one functional design specification for a minerals processing plant and it's of high quality, you use standards, your next functional design specification for a minerals processing plant will also be of high quality. And you can always then improve on it later on, but it also saves you a lot of time when you do that. So we do that on our documentation. If you look at your actual plant environment, you take it not only on your PLC code, you look at your SCADA systems, even at your equipment level and your hardware. Standardization is extremely important, as Michael explained earlier. What happens if they have different types of fuel filters or different types of equipment on the same model of Mercedes? It will be very difficult to maintain it, and the same applies to your plant. And then something that I mentioned on earlier, I think is a critical component is your, for example, the naming conventions. So if you look at the S88 hierarchy for equipment, each device is defined by its enterprise, its site, the area, the process cell, the unit, the equipment module, and the control module, and/or. So it means that if you follow this global standard on your plant and you enforce it, that you can easily, for example, then monitor the uptime of two identical pieces of equipment on different plants without the need to remap any tags or names in your cloud-based application software. And that is, I think, one of the big advantages. So I think I hope I've covered the quick overview of the benefits of using standards. I would really like to invite you to speak to myself and Michael afterwards. Give us a contact. There's a lot more to this topic, which I would like to share with you. Unfortunately, we don't have time now. And again, from my side, I just want to, before I hand over back to Michael, I just want to thank everyone of you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Donnie. So if we, in conclusion, if we just have a look at where we are now with regards to Industry 2.0, Industry 3.0, Industry 4.0, I'm sure that it's clear to you now that Industry 2.0 has slowly died a death, even though every day we're using electricity. Industry 3.0 is still valid technology and is being used all over the world. However, there's a much better way of using that technology by connecting these technologies to each other and getting them to talk to each other and making intelligent decisions. So it's important that you look at that overall equipment efficiency factor that's currently worldwide sitting at 60%, and you have a look at your current plant and your current process, and you see how can you automate your current process and get your process to run more efficiently and effectively and get that 40% gain in your process without buying any other assets. So in summary, integration of automation and energy is key. Mining and manufacturing makes up nearly 40% of IIoT. That's enormous, 40%. So we have to leave a sustainable planet for our customer. We have to make sure that we save energy by monitoring your plant. So we put in remote monitoring on your plant where we actually do monitoring of your power. And we see how we can save you some energy and reduce your carbon footprint. Big data. I've got 4 kids, you know, so I'm thinking of what my kids want to become one day, you know, and I'm just thinking big data, you know. If you look at it's going to be 5 times more. It's going to grow by 5 times more. And I try to explain what big data is, you know. So becoming a data analyst sounds like the right job to me, you know. So I'm going to try and guide my children in that direction. And that's where you, as a plant owner, should have a look at the statistics where only 2 to 5% of the data worldwide is being used. You know, put that artificial intelligence on top, get the value out of your data to increase that overall equipment efficiency. So yeah, and then we have to take that data, use it, we do the machine learning, and that spend, as you can see at the bottom, in the next few years, that spend is going to increase by 6%. And that's going to increase in the market by 6%. If you don't do it, you're going to stay behind in Industry 3.0 technology. You're not going to accelerate your technology into Industry 4.0. Thank you very much. I think we're moving on to questions now. Marie, have we got any questions?
We actually do have some questions. One of the questions being, what is an IoT edge device? Michael, if you can perhaps assist us with that.
Okay, IoT edge device. So thank you for the question. It's a great question. And I always try and understand and explain to people exactly where that edge sits, you know, and it's exactly what I talked about with the Rolls-Royce Vision, you know. It's what you keep on-premise and what you keep off-premise. But that edge device actually links to multiple devices, and this edge device can communicate to multiple Industry 3.0 technologies over variable communication protocols or signals being wired directly to it. It's got some processing power and can actually send the data into the fourth industrial revolution. Good.
Then we've got another question on standards, Donnie, if you can perhaps assist us with that. Question being, is it more expensive to use standards on an automation project?
Yes, Marie, thank you for the question. So I've seen, and that's a question, especially in the beginning when you when you made a decision to develop standards in your company. It feels like you're investing a lot of money and your project's budgets are tight. We don't really have time now to first go and develop standards, etc., etc. But I can tell you that experience has shown that on your first project, you might spend a little bit more time than you would have in the past to create your software, but in your projects that follow, you actually save a lot of money because a lot of the design work has been done. So we sit now with them, so over time you could save a lot of money with that. So definitely not more expensive. It's the benefits outweigh the cost far more. Thank you. I don't know, are there any other questions?
Marie says no. I think Willem, we can go over to you.
All right, great guys. What a interesting storyboard that you basically shared with us there. Let me just get the last slide up here. I'll just put it up here, just 1 second. So yeah, we covered quite a lot of ground there, and like as you said, Age Technologies basically joined the 4Sight group in 2017 when it was acquired, and you know, it's been around for a long time, and it's doing some brilliant automation projects all over the African continent. So the teams are working in places like Mauritania and Guinea and Zambia, Zimbabwe, and lots of projects in South Africa as well, and they've got many years worth of experience in you know, multi PLCs, so working on Rockwell or Siemens or Schneider type technology. So quite an amazing you know, presentation there and insights there from Donnie and from Michael, and also, yeah, you know, you heard some of the, you know, the value of the standards bringing, you know, the engineering down 30 to 40%, and how you can apply it, and also, you know, how automation is becoming key in every aspect of an industrial facility today, and how important that is. So these things are very insightful, and so forth. There was a few questions on, you know, is this event recorded? And the answer is yes. So tomorrow morning you'll get basically an email from us, you know, and there is a link there to the recording. You can share the recording with your colleagues. You can revisit it again a month from now and refer back to it, you know, if you want to, you know, to understand more and to listen to it again. We also you know, I think I mentioned it in the text, but if you need any of the age engineers, the asset automation engineers, to contact you after this event or if you want to have a discussion, just reply on that email or text here, and we can address it. If we didn't answer a specific question that you asked, we will also come back to you about that. So quite keen to engage with you and you know, further discuss your requirements. We have consultants all over, you know, so like in the 4Sight group right now, in the various IT cluster or the business environment cluster or the operational technology cluster, you know, there's consultants ready to chat to you about some of these topics. You know, that we are continuing with virtual training, even though we're doing lockdown. So at BluESP in the OT cluster and in simulation engineering technologies, they're doing various training, and also in the IT cluster, Actech Systems are doing various Microsoft and also Sage 3 virtual training courses that you can do either full-time virtually or do at night. So, you know, go to our websites or just send us a note if you want more information about that. And then, you know, so we are continuing with this webinar series. So next week there is a one, and we're focusing then on AspenTech Enterprise Insights, and really it's, you know, focused on how do you bring information from various sources together, how do you aggregate it, how do you do analysis, how do you apply machine learning to that data and visualize that data. But in, you know that's very interesting, but how do you go further than, for example, what you do in the Power BI environment? How do you collaborate with that data? How do you apply workflow to the data and share it with multiple sources and enhance and further enable, you know, the Tableau or the BI reporting that you already have on the sites? And how do you drive, you know, change in your organization using that type of tool? So very, very interesting session also planned for next week, Wednesday at the same time. But yeah, with that, I would like to thank everybody for your time that you spend in this webinar, and you know, we know it's valued, and we hope you learned something. If you need any more information or need us to contact you, please speak to us. Until I see you again, or until we see you again in the next webinar, cheers.